This podcast is a proud member of PodNation Media Network.
Flicker of reels, the shadows crawl. Curtains rise, a ghostly sprawl. The frames are whispers, the stories call. The drifters hum in a hollow tune. Moonlight cuts through velvet gloom. Is it a dream or a real too soon? Step into the screen where the dark turns keen. Journey with the Cinephile, unseen, unseen. The veils twist and turn as the silent light burns. A world unknown where the shadows yearn.
Hello and welcome, listeners, to Journey with a Cinephile, a horror movie podcast, where we take a deep dive into the world of horror cinema, from the eerie classics to the latest spine-chilling releases. Join me as I explore the history, themes, and artistry of horror one film at a time. Whether you're a seasoned horror fan or just stepping into the shadows, this journey is for you. So dim the lights, embrace the fear, and let's talk horror. And let's do that on episode 324. I'm your tour guide here of David Garrett Jr., recorded out of Columbus, Ohio. So for this episode here is going to be my next New Year, new movie. This is going to be number 24. As the two featured reviews, first one is I got to go see Primate at the Gateway Film Center, so this one's getting its wide release here this year. It's technically, I think, was doing some festival stuff, maybe a little bit last year. And then the randomizer selected Screams in the Night. Now, this is a giallo from 1981. So the double feature that we're kind of doing here, we have similar themes of corrupted domestication, I think that's maybe how you say that word, and then, kind of returning to the past. So then also here, I have mini reviews of The Bad Seed. This is scouring through the 6 rewatch, and then I gave a rewatch to Contagion from 2011, Scum of the Earth, which is from 1963, not necessarily a horror film, but has some darker elements to it. Then I also got to check out Don't Say a Word from 2001, again, kind of the same vein as that other one. And then the last one is going to be Libido from 1965, as I didn't realize that is Screams of the Night is technically a spiritual sequel to that one. I'm also going to run through another 4 episodes of the original run of the Twilight Zone. So I don't think there's anything else I'm going to do here for this intro outside of saying thank you so much for listening, and I hope you enjoy coming this journey with me.
Welcome to Camp Cringe, streaming on Spotify and Apple Podcasts.
The school bus arrives at Camp Sawiki Wiki for its annual summer camp.
What the hell is your problem, lady? Do you need something, or are you just trying to ruin my vibe?
My name is Tony. Are you hurt?
You kids shouldn't be out here playing with fire.
Does anyone else see that creepy lady following Nevea? Or is it just me? Yo, what is that noise?
Remember, God is watching.
Welcome to Camp Cringe, man. We're so screwed.
New episodes every 25th of the month.
Listen, here's the truth. If it's not something you love to do, automation is mandatory. You didn't start your podcast to spend hours editing clips. You started it to create, connect, and grow your audience. But here's the problem. Every other platform works with video podcasts, and manual editing eats up your most valuable asset, your time. That's where Opus Clip changes everything. Upload your video, and Opus Clip will automatically find the gold nugget moments, auto-clip the captions for the best parts, perfect for TikTok, Reels, and Shorts. 1 hour-long episode becomes 10, 20, even 30 viral-ready clips in minutes. The tool even predicts each clip's viral potential, so you know exactly what to post. No more tenuous editing, no more wasted hours, just you staying in the place that you love to be, creating content that matters. Head to podnationopus.com for your free trial and get back to doing what you do best. Stop editing and start creating now.
And for my first mini review here is going to be The Bad Seed from 1956. This is directed by Mervyn Leroy. Now, the screenplay was done by John Lee Mahin. And then we also have Maxwell Anderson and William March. I know one of them did the novel that this is based from, the other one did the play, because that's what this is, I believe, based more off of that stage production. But this stars Nancy Kelly, Patty McCormick, and Henry Jones. This is a psychological thriller drama horror film that is from the United States. It is currently sitting on a 7.4 on IMDb and a 3.7 on Letterboxd, or a synopsis being: a set of parents adore their daughter despite her tendency for selfishness. Her mother keeps her darker side to herself, but when a schoolmate mysteriously dies, her self-deception unravels. So this is when I originally saw thanks to my mother. I enjoyed it quite a bit, and it stuck with me over the years. So the first time I would have watched would have been right after college, so that's been that's been more than 16 years ago. I've now given this one another watch as part of my scouring through the sixes. So I'm going to start would be that this is interesting to watch right after college. Being fresh and expanding my knowledge of the genre as well as like the history of cinema, and then giving it another go as a parent now gives me some different insight. There's not a lot happening, but this is more of seeing the mother here, Christine Penmark, portrayed by Kelly, and dealing with the shock and kind of guilt of what her daughter Rhoda, portrayed by McCormick, is capable of. So this is adapted from a novel and play that reflects his kind of stage origins, a common feature of the era with how everything is kind of filmed. Kelly, who reprises her stage role, delivers a powerful performance as a mother grappling with a terrible truth that her beloved daughter's harmful actions and lies. Her internal conflict intensifies as others are hurt, forcing her to confront a devastating decision that profoundly moved me. Kelly brilliantly portrays a mother pushed to her limits. So the acting opposite here of McCormick, being as young as she is also amazing. She's cute, which is disarming, and she seems to have these perfect mannerisms and is just sweet. There are cracks in what we get early on. We see that Rhoda is used to being spoiled. She is manipulative to get her way. When she doesn't, that's where it gets scary. Leroy is this guy who is a maintenance man here. He is portrayed by Henry Jones. Is an interesting character as somebody who pushes this little girl's buttons. Being the age that Rhoda is, she loses control of her temper with him, and McCormick is excellent here as well. So there's an interesting element with Christine learning of her past. She invites Reginald Tasker, who is portrayed by Gage Clark, to ask him some questions about if it's always caused by like their upbringing and environment. Reggie doesn't believe it. He believes that there's a specific case that he shows that it could be inherited. Now, Christine's father is a former writer as well, Richard Bravo, portrayed by Paul Fix. He believes it widely agreed science is that it is, the nature. It's actually nurture, not nature. There's an interesting reveal here to reinforce this idea that Rhoda's evil is inherited. That feels shoehorned in a bit and forced. Let's then explore that I didn't necessarily state here is that Rhoda is showing the subversion of childhood innocence. She uses manners as a mask for her lack of empathy and remorse. This is also amplified by the facade of the 1950s like suburban perfection. There's hidden darkness, and then that makes it even worse by the age of Rhoda and the lengths that she'll go. Let's then explore the acting performances. I've already said that Kelly and McCormick are great. They both carry this film. Jones works as somebody who pokes Rhoda. He reveals cracks, and then he doesn't truly know how depraved she is, which is great seeing that fear grow with him. I think that Eileen Eckhart plays the mother of the boy who dies very well. She is portraying Hortense Daigle. And then there is, what happens with her actually, it breaks my heart seeing her turn to alcohol to cope with her grief. Her embarrassing herself to learn the truth adds to it. And then I'd also give credit here to Evelyn Varden, who plays the landlord and the upstairs lady of Monica Breedlove. There is William Hopper, who is Colonel Kenneth Penmark. He's the husband and father. And then we have Fix, Clark, and the rest of the cast round this out for what was needed. All that's left then be filmmaking. Even though this is staged like a play, that's not a major issue. This mostly takes place at the Penmark apartment. The cinematography and framing capture how idyllic the place is to live. The tragedies that happen raise the tension. Seeing the stress of everything mount on Christine does as well. Now, this is limited in the effects used. It doesn't necessarily need them. It's more of a character study. Other than that, the sound design was fine without necessarily standing out. So in conclusion, this remains a captivating and disturbing psychological thriller, elevated by exceptional performances of Kelly and McCormick. While its stage origins are evident in the limited setting and dialogue-heavy script, this effectively uses its intimacy to focus intensely on Christine's terrifying realization and subsequent moral dilemma. The film successfully subverts the image of 1950s innocence, presenting a chilling character study on inherited evil and lengths a mother will go to protect or stop her own child. It is powerful and unsettling cinematic experience that continues to resonate, earning its place as a classic in the horror and thriller genres. So my rating here for The Bad Seed, I gave this one an 8 out of 10. I'm have a run here of movies that aren't necessarily horror, but I'll kind of get into why I'm covering them. But first is going to be Contagion from 2011. This was directed by Steven Soderbergh. This was written by Scott S. Burns, and then the stars Matt Damon, Kate Winslet, and Jude Law. This is a disaster psychological thriller drama film that is a co-production of the United States, United Arab Emirates, and Hong Kong. This is currently sitting on a 6.8 on IMDb and a 3.4 on Letterboxd, or synopsis being: an epidemic of a lethal airborne virus that kills within days rapidly grows. The worldwide medical community races to find a cure and control the panic that spreads faster than the virus itself. So I originally saw some work in a family video. I don't think I connected that this is directed by Soderbergh. I took this home as a pre-street, and it was terrifying. I'll go ahead and preface here that it isn't necessarily a horror film, like I was saying. What it is, though, is a scary look at how ineffective government and how selfish humanity is. Since we've lived through a pandemic to something that's not as deadly as what we get here, it's interesting to revisit, and this is technically going to be then an Odyssey Through the Ones, because I think this goes dark enough into being a horror film. So where I'm going to start is that kind of bringing this thing with, sticking with this pandemic idea. It's crazy to think that this originated a decade before everything that happened with COVID. I'd bet that things that happened with the Spanish flu contributed to being a part of the basis here. So a quick disclaimer, COVID was deadly, but nowhere near what we get in this film. So now that I have it set up, let's kind of look at this. Hits harder seeing the realism of how quickly the world breaks down and how closely what happened with COVID happens in this film. There's also this idea that lives are changed and how we resist. There's panic that sets in and seeing people begin to loot or attack others, even over small things. Fighting for individual survival is a part of that. We also see people taking advantage of their position, like Dr. Cheever, who's portrayed by Lawrence Fishburne, shares classified information with his wife, girlfriend. I'm not really necessarily sure what she is, because she makes a comment, but in the credits, she's listed as, having the same last name as him. So Aubrey's portrayed by Sanaa Lathan. So it does come from a good place, but it's also selfish. Now, something else to include here is it's possible for a random variation of a virus could be as devastating as it is here. So we have this character of Alan Crumvetti, portrayed by Law, is convinced it's a bioweapon. I love that we get to see how it actually starts at the very end. That brings back up the concept of misinformation and how dangerous it is. This is more evident now with the rise of AI, or just political figures claiming things that we can see or hear as not being real, and making people question whether it is or not, and just warping reality is just wild. Another element is the ineffectiveness of bureaucracy. It has its place, but without science and doing things the right way, this could result in people getting sick or even people to lose faith in what they're trying to do. It also prevents people from being saved. I love how we see multiple characters breaking rules for the sake of humanity. Sometimes people need to get bold for the sake of survival, and that's kind of what happens here to survive everybody, or to pretty much save the world from being completely destroyed. So the tagline here is nothing spreads faster than fear. That's realized through the themes of societal breakdown, panic, and paranoia due to broken trust. Key themes include the proliferation of false information by alt experts, government information control exacerbating the spread of negativity, the clarity it brings to scientific concepts, the terrifying randomness of survival, the conflict between professional ethics and protecting family, and ultimately humanity being responsible for the crisis. Where I'll then go next to be filmmaking. The cinematography and framing here are good. A good touch is to establish these major cities that are going to be kind of a focus for different characters, giving us what their populations are. We then have excellent editing to jump between different things to develop each of the stories until they ultimately crash together. The practical effects to see how this virus wears on people adds to the horror. It's done in a realistic manner. Other than that, the sound design fit for what was needed. Then the stellar ensemble cast delivers strong performances. We have Marion Cotillard traces the virus but exposes corruption and what is being done what is done to get her out of China, and she is portraying the character of course, this is going to go more by how they were introduced and less. She is portraying Lenora Ortons, something like that. Now, Damon's character here of Mitch Emhoff, he's Beth's husband, and Beth is kind of patient zero here. She's portrayed by Paltrow. Now, I think it's interesting is that he has a daughter from outside of her they're a blended family, Jory. I think that what he does to protect her is good. Jory's portrayed by Anna Jacoby Heron. And then we also see that Mitch has a bitter pill to swallow with reveals that he learns Fishburne's action to control the situation damages credibility. Law as an alt journalist creates chaos. We also have Kate Winslet, Jennifer Elhe Elliot Gould and Dimitri Martin are problem solvers as different scientists racing to stop this virus. I've already brought up Peltro. We have Bryan Cranston, Nig Chin Han, John Hawkes, Lathan, and the others kind of complete this supporting cast. In summary, this remains a chilling, prescient, and effective thriller. Elevated by Soderbergh's restrained direction and phenomenal ensemble cast, its strength lies not in just the terrifying realism of the virus's spread and physical toll, but it's a profound exploration of human nature under duress, highlighting the breakdown of societal order, the dangers of misinformation, and the ethical conflicts faced by those trying to save humanity. Watching it now post-pandemic only sharpens its critique of bureaucracy and the unsettling truth that fear often proves the most contagious element of all. It is a compelling and thought-provoking film, uses horror of a fictional pandemic to reflect the complexities and vulnerabilities of our modern world. So this time around, I've actually came up quite a bit on my rating here. I now give Contagion a 9 out of 10. This is very well made. And for my next main review, not necessarily a horror film, but it goes into some darker elements here, and that's going to be Scum of the Earth. This is from 1963, written and directed by Herschel Gordon Lewis. Stars William Kerwin, Louise Down, and Lawrence J. Aberwood. This is a drama thriller from the United States, currently sitting on a 5.3 on IMDb and a 2.8 on Letterboxd, with our synopsis being: a naive and innocent teenage girl is blackmailed into modeling in the nude for a photographer who is in league with a teenage gang whose boss illegally sells photos of teenage girls being abused and degraded. So I should include here, this is a drama thriller film, since I think I did leave those out, but this popped on my radar. It's kind of like a semi-remake of something that my mother had me watch from something that was earlier, not nearly as depraved as this one. But I will say, this is more tame to things that we see today. So I know this was covered on some podcasts. I believe one of them was Cinema Psyops. So I had originally picked up the DVD years ago. Didn't realize it was a Lewis film back then. I finally got the time to check this one out. But what we're going to do is this would fall into the Ruffy films. And I watched a documentary that kind of helped explain what these are. I think it was an exploitation doc. So these are inspired by the Nudie Cuties. Doesn't have as much nudity, but we're getting women in bikinis and lingerie. They are having pictures taken against their will. At least they start out doing it how they agree to, but then as things kind of escalate, they don't. So the photographer is Harmon Johnson, portrayed by Kerwin, and we see things start out with a young lady named Sandy, portrayed by Sandra Sinclair. Now, she's had enough of what she's doing. She wants out, and she's made this company quite a bit of money, so she's given a deal by Lang, who is the ultimate boss here, and he is Lawrence J. Aberwood. If she can find a replacement, then he will pay her as a recruitment agent, still keep her on and everything like that. She just doesn't have to model unless she can't find anybody. So this leads Sandy to bringing in Kim Sherwood, portrayed by Down. Now all the information she is provided to her. Now Kim wants to go to college. She can't afford it though. The money that she's given by Harmon is good. This is all to lure her in. And then she's blackmailed to go farther than she wants to. And we have these two guys who push the envelope. One of them being Larry, portrayed by Mel Arnold. And I think she goes to school with him, actually. Then the other guy is Ajax, portrayed by Craig Malsdensley Jr. I might be mispronouncing that name. Not really necessarily sure. His name is quite interesting with its spelling and everything like that. But I'm not going to... I think it might have also have an extra S in there. So that should be... Where I want to start is how truly gross this is. I'm not sure if I would... If we ever learn the age of Kim. So I know Down was like 23, 24 when this was made, something along those lines. So she's playing a high school student. The character is more than likely underage, which would make what they're doing even more illegal. It's interesting that the opening sequence, we're seeing a file of pictures being passed around until they're sold. What is good here is it shows that the title is a perfect description of everybody that's involved in this racket. Now, watching this reminds me when I had gotten in a little bit of trouble in college. So like Kim, I was naive, which made things worse. Sandy seems similarly affected, but is now jaded. As a parent, I fear for my children. And that's why we've literally told them that if they get in trouble, we will always still love them and everything like that, but to come to us before they kind of get themselves in too deep. But I also know that sometimes kids want to figure things out on their own. So yeah, there's that line to toe. Before Kim gets too involved, we see her father, Mr. Sherwood, portrayed by Edward Mann, loves her, and his pressure to succeed likely contributes to her fear of like disappointing him. I relate to this as I try to use these examples to prepare my children so they don't feel overwhelmed like I was saying. I'll then say that despite its raw, low-budget feel, it does explore some interesting elements. We're seeing Kim's loss of innocence through coercion and blackmail by older men. There's a cycle of exploitation with Sandy, who is probably in a similar position as Kim. Those men who are taking advantage are showing moral decay, a real fear in this time period that was made. There's also this illusion of choice for Kim, which is heartbreaking. I also wanted to include here some information that I had found. I'm watching this with modern eyes. This is kind of reflecting the anxieties of the era it was made regarding the sexual revolution and the perceived dangers of the growing pornography industry. And I mean, we're still feeling the effects here where people blame this more than blaming individuals. Let's then go over and say that the acting here is uneven. It seems like, for me, all the villains are good. Kerwin is given a little bit of a redemption story, but I'm not fully on his side in the end. It is fitting for something that happens with Sandy. They are made for each other. But Kerwin, Arnold, Sinclair, and Aberwood are all solid. Dawn is flirting with being over the top. I do end up feeling bad for her, so that's good on her part. Everyone else, I feel like they're kind of just reading lines, lacking emotion. They're also very amateur, so that's a lot of it. All that's left then to be filmmaking. What we get here is fine. I like how this is set up, taking place in a small town. Setting up that Kim lives in the suburbs is good. When she's bullied at this local place, that felt real enough. We don't get a lot in the way of effects. It's not that type of movie though either. The soundtrack fits the era that this was made. This is just interesting as it has almost no nudity. I wouldn't be shocked to learn that this is more due to budgetary reasons, because I'm assuming some of these actors and actresses don't necessarily want to get nude if they're not being paid, which I don't blame them. In conclusion, this is a product of its time that still manages to feel sleazy and disturbing even today, largely due to the uncomfortable subject matter and the strong performances from the villainous cast members. While the production values are decidedly low budget and some acting is weak, this succeeds in its exploration of coercion, moral depravity, and the exploitations of the vulnerable. It serves as a potent, albeit rough, document reflecting the cultural anxiety surrounding sexuality and youth in the late 60s. For fans of early exploitation cinema, especially those interested in Lewis's broader influences, this is certainly a watchable piece of cinematic history. So my rating here for Scum of the Earth, I gave this one a 5.5 out of 10. Then up next is going to be Don't Say a Word from 2001. This is directed by Gary Flidar, maybe that's how you say that, I'm not sure. But this is written by Andrew Clavin, Anthony Peckham, and Patrick Smith Kelly. And I believe Clavin also wrote the novel, or like the source material here. But this is starring Michael Douglas, Sean Bean, and Brittany Murphy. This is a dark comedy, psychological drama, thriller, mystery film that is, I believe this is actually a co-production. Let me just double check that. Of United States, Australia, Switzerland, and Canada. This is currently sitting on a 6.3 on IMDb and a 2.9 on Letterboxd, or a synopsis being: a prominent New York psychiatrist must coax a traumatized teen into divulging a mysterious code number. So I caught part of this back in the day. My sister's a big fan, I believe. So the guess here was that she was probably working through the filmography of Famke Janssen. Now what is interesting is I knew the reveal, to an extent at least. I didn't remember much, so I decided to check this out upon a recommendation from my sister. So the setup is here that back in 1991 there was a heist at a bank. Patrick Coaster, portrayed by Bean, leads a team to steal a rare red diamond. The problem is that he's double-crossed by a member of his team. He goes back to the scene of the crime. There are events that we learn more about as the story progresses that actually lands him and most of the team in prison. So in the present, we have Dr. Nathan Conrad, portrayed by Douglas. He's married to Aggie, portrayed by Jansen. They have a daughter, Jessie, portrayed by Sky Nicole Bartusek. Now, it's Thanksgiving Eve, and Dr. Conrad is heading home when he gets a call from a former co-worker of Dr. Lewis Sachs, portrayed by Oliver Platt. There's a patient that nobody can get through to. Dr. Conrad is considered to be one of the best, so he meets with her, and this is Elizabeth Barrows, portrayed by Murphy, and she's quite closed off. Dr. Conrad notices something intriguing about her, though. So things take a dark turn when Dr. Conrad wakes up and his daughter is missing. He learns she was taken by Patrick and his team. They demand they get a number from Elizabeth. He has until 5 p.m. to get it. Dr. Conrad needs to figure out a way to connect to her, but everything isn't as it seems as information gets revealed. So I'll say this is a solid little thriller. Douglas has been doing so many of these around this era. What's interesting is that this one's a little less of an erotic thriller like Basic Instinct or Fatal Attraction. We have an interesting premise of this young woman who has information a group of criminals need it. There is an interesting reveal here that she might not have issues that Dr. Sachs believes, and there might be more that she's trying to protect herself and needing a hospital like this, and kind of everything, just how difficult it is to get in and out of these. So an interesting element here is that Elizabeth, that tugged at my heartstrings. She witnessed her father's murder when she was a little girl. Now, she was found wandering on an island outside of New York City. She's been to a variety of mental hospitals since that day. Her existence upbringing has been that of fear. Dr. Conrad sees an opportunity to connect with her. He brings a doll, a book, and a toy that all belong to his daughter. He has ulterior motives, but as a father, I'd do whatever it took to get my daughter back as well. So the vulnerability of secrets is a key theme. Elizabeth's survival depends on the information that she holds regarding the location of this diamond, yet this knowledge is limited by the system's gaslighting. Witnessing her father's death adds trauma. Dr. Conrad is conflicted between his parental duties and his medical oath, breaking rules to save his daughter while needing to build trust with his patient. The villains are unique, using technology to monitor everything, while New York offers anonymity, rendering characters like Aggie, who has a broken leg, powerless. So the acting performances here are generally solid. Douglas delivers a familiar, well-executed role. Bean is good as a stoic villain who only shows emotion late in the film. Murphy is good as the exploited patient. Bartusek and Jansen are solid as the daughter and mother, respectively. Platt's performance was enjoyable. We also have Jennifer Esposito, who is good as a detective, as she lacked sufficient information to solve the case. The rest of the cast round this out for the necessary roles. All thought that the filmmaking, this is well made. It feels generic with the cinematography and framing. The best part of the characters looking over their shoulder or seeing them in a distance. It gives an unnerving feeling of always being watched. I think that this captures our set piece as well, which includes like the Conrad apartment, the mental hospital, and then this island for the climax. Other than that, I'd say the soundtrack fit for what was needed without necessarily standing out. So in conclusion, this serves as a competent, if somewhat generic, early 2000s thriller, successfully leveraging Douglas' established persona in the genre. While it lacks the edgy eroticism of some of his earlier work, the film maintains tension through its central premise, a desperate father racing against time to extract a vital secret from a traumatized patient. The performances, particularly from Douglas, Bean, and Murphy, anchor the story, while the thematic exploration of trauma, parental duty, and vulnerability of secrets adds necessarily depth. Although the filmmaking standards, it feels standard, that is, it effectively captures the claustrophobic atmosphere of surveillance and the various set pieces. Overall, it's a solid recommendation for fans of psychological thrillers who appreciate a well-paced narrative and compelling, if predictable, payoff. So my rating, though, for Don't Say a Word, I'm glad that I finally checked this one out fully and give it a 7 out of 10. Then my last feature that I'm going to be reviewing here for minis is going to be Libido from 1965. So this is co-written and co-directed by Ernesto Gastaldi and Vittorio Salerno. And then it also looks like Mara Merrill also did some of the writing here as well, but this stars Dominique Bachero, Merrill, and then Giancarlo Giannini. So this is an Italian giallo crime drama horror thriller film from Italy. It is currently sitting on a 6.5 on IMDb and a 3.3 on Letterboxd, with our synopsis being: a young man visits his ancestral home accompanied by his guardian and their wives, where he is plagued by memories and the influence of a murderous psychosexual father. So let's go ahead and say here that the main character here is Christian Corriero. I think it might be how you say that, but he's portrayed by Giannini. His wife is Helena, portrayed by Bashiro, and then his guardian is Paul, who is portrayed by Luciano Pigozzi, and then his wife, who is younger than everybody else here, is Brigitte, portrayed by Merrill. So this is a film that I learned about through podcasts. I'm not entirely sure which one's offhand, but it was on my shorter list to check out. It was intriguing because I recognized one of our co-writers here of Gastaldi. He was prolific, and then seeing that he co-directed this added intrigue. Now, I decided to move this up since it's a spiritual sequel to Screams in the Night, which is a featured review here, and that was selected by the randomizer. And this also doubles as a voyage to the fives. I almost watched this during Italian Horror Month, to be honest, so kind of interesting there. So where I want to start is that this is an interesting little film. It does well in capturing that gothic feel while being a modern take. We have this small group of characters coming to a remote location with an unstable individual who starts to break down. So that'd be Christian, and then Paul is the one who wants to bring him here mostly because he thinks it'll help him with his issues that he has with his psychosis. So then Helena, late in this film, acknowledges that coming here was a bad idea. It has brought back all these bad memories. I thought that the therapy had cleared that, but being here drudged it up. So this is classified as a giallo and a mystery as well. Now that I have it set up, let me explore a little bit more here. This is a giallo where we don't get killings to spark the investigation. There is sexual deviance that comes in the form of Christian's father, as we see this opening sequence where he has a woman who I believe is also being portrayed by Merrill tied up in his bed, and she's dead. And then it was thought that Christian's father committed suicide. But since the body was never found, Christian suspects that he is still alive. So this could also be a hallucination. The father would chain women to his bed, and he has his room full of mirrors, and he kills them in there. And this is actually the room that Brigitte picks out when they first get here. So we get he's violent in what he does, and then this has caused his son to have an aversion to sex, and that sets the stage for the climax. So I'm going to go ahead and go and say that this mystery is interesting. Since our lead is Christian, we don't know how much of what he's saying we can trust. He's convinced that Paul wants his money. There isn't truly any proof. We have these weird things that start happening that lead him to surmise it is him. We also learned some interesting information that his wife didn't know, and that there was a connection with Paul. So there's these little reveals that change your perception. We aren't given the full idea of what is truly going on here until everything gets revealed, and I went along for the ride and enjoyed that. So there's some other themes to explore here. I think it's fitting to have our lead named Christian, who is dealing with sexual repression. That seemed like it was on purpose. It is using the idea of biological determinism as well, or that he is destined to repeat the sins of his father. He is definitely gaslit here, hiding the truth of what is happening. There's obvious look at sexual perversion as well as voyeurism. Christian watches Paul and Brigitte, plus the whole concept of this room of mirrors. So then the cast of 4 people in this giallo is actually pretty strong. There's an uncredited roles here of like whoever plays the Christian character as a boy, but I mean Giannini excels as a struggling man forced to stay in the house that he hates. His eventual predicament isn't entirely his fault. Bashiro is effective as his seemingly loving wife, whose true nature is later revealed. Meryl is good as this younger, carefree woman who tempts Christian. I don't necessarily think she's always trying to, but that's just how she's being who she is. Pigozzi is solid as his well-meaning guardian. All performances are commendable. All it's left then be some filmmaking aspects. I think the cinematography and framing are good in establishing the setting. This manor is isolated and outside of the city. There's this harsh element with the rocky shore nearby. Isolating most of this manor builds a claustrophobic feel. It captures a modern gothic feel as well. We are limited to the effects that we get, but what we got worked well. Other than that, I think that we have a solid soundtrack that enhanced the atmosphere as needed. So in conclusion, this 1965 film is an early and intriguing entry into the giallo genre, successfully blending the atmospheric claustrophobia of a gothic setting with a modern psychological horror. While it deviates from the typical murder mystery by focusing on the deep-seated trauma and sexual repression of our lead character, Christian, Libido still delivers a tense, paranoid thriller. A strong ensemble cast and effective cinematography amplify the sense of isolation and moral decay, leading to a satisfying, dark, and ambiguous conclusion that plays with the audience's perception of reality. It's a noteworthy piece of Italian cinema that effectively explores complex themes of heredity, deviance, and psychological manipulation. So actually, this one I thought worked rather well. I give Libido an 8 out of 10. And then I have 4 episodes here from the original run of The Twilight Zone, and first is going to be 90 Years Without Slumbering. So this one, we have a guy who's cleaning a clock, and there is a woman that is kind of annoyed with what he's doing, because I believe he should be asleep, but he has trouble with that. So that is the grandfather, who is Sam Forsman, portrayed by Ed Wynn, and then the young woman is Marnie Kirk, portrayed by Carolyn Kearney. So he was a clockmaker, and he won't eat or sleep. The clock is running slow after cleaning it, as he forgot to wind it, and he's really just kind of concerned that even when he does, and his little tinkering seems to just not have everything sync up. And then there's also Doug Kirk, who is married to Marnie. He is James T. Callahan. He's quite annoyed with everything here. So the fear here is that Sam has is that if this clock stops ticking, he's going to pass away. Actually, I'm pretty sure Ed Wynn does the voice of the White Rabbit from the original Alice in Wonderland, like the Disney one. But so then he ends up going to see a doctor here, who is Dr. Mel Avery, portrayed by William Sargent. He thinks that the clock should be sold. And then there ends up being a friend here of that Marnie has of Carol Chase, portrayed by Carol Byron, who is willing to who is willing to buy it and everything like that. But the thing is here, Sam starts to panic when she's out of town. He's willing to come over and like tinker with it and everything while it's over at her house. But they end up going out of town, her and her husband, and he can't get in there to wind it. So he attempts to break in, and a cop catches him, and there ends up being a nightmare where he's talking to a ghostly version of himself. This one's really just kind of looking at getting old and dealing with panic that comes with your own mortality and everything like that. I rather enjoyed this one well enough. And yeah, so I end up giving this one a 7 out of 10. And then the next episode I have here is going to be Ring-a-Ding Girl. And this one is directed by Alan Crosland Jr. and was written by Earl Hamner Jr. And this one is when flying across the country en route to shoot a film in Rome, movie star Barbara Bunny Blake receives a gift from her hometown fans in Howardville, a ring that gives a warning to come home. So this one here is that main character of Bunny is portrayed by Maggie McNamara. She lives in Hollywood. She's a gimmick that she collects rings, so that's why they call her the Ring-a-Ding Girl. She's an actress. And then she actually has Hildy Powell, who's portrayed by Mary Monday. She is her assistant or like her manager, and she wants to do this thing, but Bunny gets this ring, and it tells her she ends up seeing her sister, who is portrayed by, actually I think Hildy is actually her sister, so Hildy is there, and Cece is her manager, Betty Lou Gearson, and it's tells the ring, she sees an image of her sister, it tells her to come home, so she does. She has to meet her nephew of Bud, portrayed by David Macklin, and it's the same day as Founders Day picnic. But when she gets home, she ends up seeing this person who I believe is on the news, and that would be Mr. Gentry, portrayed by Hank Patterson. She also sees a Dr. Floyd, who's George Mitchell. She ends up starting to seek these people out and wants to figure out. Oh, actually, never mind. The guy on the TV is Ben Braden, portrayed by Bing Russell. So she ends up going to see Ben, asks for help, actually tries to set up this thing where she's going to do a performance at the local school so people don't go to the Founders Day. She's tired, overworked. She's ignoring it. The doctor tells her she needs to slow down, but she refuses to. And then we actually get this cool shot in the rain, and I'm not going to say anything there, but there's actually something that really happens in this one that caught my attention. I gave this one an 8.5 out of 10 just because I didn't necessarily see it. We've seen this type of story before, but I like what this one did. And then so next up is going to be You Drive. This one is directed by John Brom, and then Earl Hamner Jr. wrote this one. And then this stars Edward Andrews, Helen Westcott, and Kevin Hagen. So after a hit-and-run motor vehicle accident that killed a bike-riding child who was actually delivering newspapers, so he's about a teen, then letting his coworker Pete Radcliffe take the blame, office manager Oliver Pope is relentlessly haunted by a suddenly aggressive driver. So Oliver is portrayed by Andrews. His wife is Lillian, portrayed by Westcott. And then Pete, this guy here, is Hagen. So this one, we see him when he's driving home. We actually see that he hits this kid, and then he leaves the scene. So he's stressed about it after coming home. He snaps at his wife. He makes an anonymous call to check in on the boy and finds out that the boy is in critical condition. Now, the wife ends up reading about it in the paper and wants whoever did it to be punished. But then weird things starts happening with their car in the garage. She's convinced that there is a intruder, and when he goes out there and checks, there's nobody there, and he ends up starting to like attack his car and everything. So this is definitely, manifestation in his guilt. There's this part here though where the wife drives the car and it like stops right around the scene of the accident and ends up getting towed to a place to get it fixed, but then it ends up back in their garage and everybody's confused about it there. We actually see Pete, this rival at work, come over and they get into a little tiff. Ollie's going to start walking. He's going to walk to work because he wants to get rid of this car, especially because he has an excuse now that his wife drove it and there were some issues with it. And then we actually see something very creepy here as the car drives itself, follows him, picks him up, and kind of leads to the resolution here. This one, though, I thought it was a little bit more cheesy. I gave it a 7 out of 10. Some good ideas here. We've seen it just done in other places. And then the last episode I'm going to cover is number 12, Looks Just Like You. This one is directed by Abner Biberman. This was written by Charles Beaumont and John Talmerlin. So that in a future society, everybody must undergo an operation at age 19 to become beautiful and conform to society. Since her father killed himself after his surgery, 18-year-old Marilyn Cubberly desperately wants to hold onto her identity. So this is starring Colin Wilcox Paxton and Richard Long and Pamela Austin. So our main character here is Marilyn, portrayed by Paxton. So her change is coming up. She doesn't want to, though. Now, her mother is Lana, portrayed by Susie Parker, and Grace is their maid. But it's interesting is that everybody looks like each other. And I thought at first this is a robot, but nope, then I actually realized, because I didn't read the synopsis ahead of time, everybody chooses a new beautiful form and makes everybody kind of conform. So her Uncle Rick shows up. He's portrayed by Richard Long. Her father actually looked like him as well. And then she goes to see this doctor who also looks like him. And then there's this other person that works at this place. So this is created to eliminate inequality and injustice. And there's like the loss of individuality and everything that comes with it. So this is definitely like a critique on plastic surgery and like bodybuilding, where people are changing how they look and everything like that. I thought this one was rather kind of clever with some of the stuff that happens. I don't love the ending because it definitely, it's dark. I will say that. But I wish something more would have happened, but so this one I end up giving a 7 out of 10 to. So that's all I have here then for mini reviews. Let me go ahead and get you over to the trailer of my first featured review.
We're in Hawaii, baby! This is crazy! This is home. There's someone I want you to meet. This is Ben.
My hand? He wants to shake my hand?
Yeah. Hi, Ben. Oh. Our mom rescued him, and now he's part of our family.
Ben, happy.
He's kind of cute. Yeah, right?
Ben?
Did something bite him?
Ben? There's something wrong with Ben.
Hey, what happened? It's me, Lucy. It's okay.
In the pool! Ben can't swim!
Lucy, bad. Bad. Bad.
Give me the phone. Try recent calls.
It's ringing. Brad, listen to me. We need help.
Oh, you need some help?
Send somebody.
the right place?
Who the hell has a pet chimp?
And for my first featured review here is going to be Primate from 2025, getting its wide release here in 2026. So this is co-written and directed by Johannes Roberts, and then he did this with Ernest Ryra, something like that. So this is starring Johnny Sequoia, Jess Alexander, and Troy Kotzer, as well as having Victoria Wynant, Gia Hunter, Benjamin Chang, Charlie Mann, Tien Simon, Miguel Torres Umba, Aminia Abi, Robin Chalk, Joe Abercrombie, Nick Romano, Ben Prosky, and Stuart Whalen. So this is a horror film. This is an animal attack film. I guess you could kind of throw it into eco-horror as well, but this is a co-production between the United Kingdom, United States, Canada, and Australia. Currently sitting on a 6.3 on IMDb and a 2.7 on Letterboxd, or synopsis being: Lucy reunites with her family, including a pet chip of Ben. Now, Ben contracts rabies during a pool party and turns aggressive as Lucy and her friends try to find a way to survive. So Lucy, the main character here, portrayed by Sequoia, and then Ben is actually stop motion, not stop motion, but it's like motion camera stuff where he's in a suit, and Ben that was done by Umba. So then, this is a film that I was intrigued about. My buddy Cam asked if I saw the trailer, so I missed it, mostly due to I try to avoid trailers when I can. I end up catching part of it ahead of seeing something else in the theater. Then when checking Showtime, seeing this was coming, I was intrigued since I'm a fan of animal attack films. Other than knowing that it'd be a chimpanzee film, I came to this one blind. So let's do some feature notes before I jump into the movie, and I'll start with the director of Roberts. He has helmed 16 features and 2 shorts. I've now seen 6 of his works. Everything that he's done has been in genre. So I've seen The Strangers Prey at Night, Resident Evil, Welcome to Raccoon City, and both 47 Meters Down films, as well as this, of course, and he also has a short in VHS 99. So his top 3 that I'm missing are The Other Side of the Door, Storage 24, and a movie called F from 2010. So he has an assistant director here of Charlie Vaughn. He has done this for 8 films. I believe he's come up with either A Quiet Place Day 1 or In the Earth. So I've seen 3 of his works. Those are the only ones he's done in horror, including this. So then as a writer, Roberts has done this for 15 movies and 2 shorts. He's also directed everything except The Strangers sequel. No, he did direct that one. He didn't write it, though. Now, top 3 that I'm missing are going to be the same things that I've said as him as a director. So in his co-writer here of Ryra, who has done this previously. Now, they've worked together previously, is what I'm saying there. He has written 7. I've seen 3 of those. I've seen both 47 Meters Down films and this, and it sounds, I've not seen The Other Side of the Door. He has an upcoming 47 Meters Down film. Looks like The Wreck is a subtitle there. Then over to the cast, I'll start with Sequoia. She's been in 8 motion pictures and 1 short. Only thing I've ever seen her in thus far. She has one other one in genre called Windwalkers. Her co-star and rival in the film is Alexander. She's been in 7 films and 1 short. First of hers that I've seen has one other one in genre with A Banquet that I've not seen yet. Then lastly, I'll look at Kotzer. He's been in 10 movies and 2 shorts. I've only ever seen him in the number 23, which is dark, bordering on horror. But this is technically the only one in genre that he has done. All right, then let's jump into this movie here. Now, we start a movie with a guy named Drew, who is portrayed by Mann, who's a veterinarian, comes to see Ben. What we'll learn later is that he was called in to check because the chimp is acting a little bit off. Looks like he's gotten bitten by a mongoose, and then we see there's something severely wrong as of now, as this chimp viciously attacks Drew. It then shifts to 36 hours prior. Lucy is finally coming home to Hawaii. She's joined by her friend Kate, portrayed by Wyant. And then we have Lucy is bummed when she sees that Hannah was also invited, and she is portrayed by Alexander. So on this flight, they meet a couple of guys who are quite annoying, if I'm going to be honest. So then this group arrives in Hawaii. They're greeted at the airport by Kate's brother, Nick, portrayed by Chang. He is bringing the crew to Lucy's family home. It is here that we meet her father, Adam, portrayed by Kotzer. What's interesting is that he is a deaf writer, and in real life, he is also deaf. Now, he's working on a deal which will cause him to leave the next day. It makes Lucy sad, but she also hasn't been home since her mother passed away, so you can't fully blame him here. And the mother passed away due to cancer. Lucy also has a sister, Erin, portrayed by Hunter, who is upset that she hasn't been home in a while. What I'll include here is that the mother was a linguist professor, something along those lines, linguistics. That's the word I'm looking for. Ben was a chimp that they adopted when he was a baby. Now, the reason was they were teaching him sign language. It worked better than they could have imagined. Ben learned over 300 words and phrases from different newspaper clippings that we get to see. He also has a tablet that has some more common words on it, which I'll get into what this feels like it's paying direct homage to. Upon arriving, everything seems to be good as Lucy is stoked to see Ben. The only one who isn't is Hannah, but Troy reveals that the chimp is nervous around new people. Everybody's is expecting a fun, relaxing weekend with a bit of partying that turns into a nightmare. Ben gets free and traps our group in the swimming pool. Now, this says that chimps cannot swim. I guess that's actually false, but they needed something here to be able to isolate our characters. And so as long as they seem to stay in the water, they're fine. It doesn't help, though, they're up against something as strong and athletic as a chimpanzee. Now, Troy gets news while he's away, but can he help before it is too late? Or get help before it's too late, either way. So that's really my recap, but I'll show the characters. What I want to start is that I wasn't fully sure what I was expecting. I mean that in a good way. There's a great opening sequence with Drew and Ben. Sets a tone for the film, which I appreciated. Now, from there, I was hooked to see where things would go as they played out. So what struck me here is leaving the theater is that this feels a lot like Cujo, but with a killer primate. It is moving the location from the Midwest to beautiful Hawaii. What is interesting there, this house where everything takes place is isolated. We get a drone shot to show us that the house is on a cliff. There aren't any neighbors nearby. The house is gorgeous, and it makes sense since the father is a successful author, and his wife was also a professor, scientist. Sticking with the correlation as well, our group gets trapped in a swimming pool instead of a car. Where I'm going to shift is having an increased cast with a limited, as opposed to the limited one that we got in the Stephen King property, makes it livelier. After the initial attack, we trap the rest of the group, excluding Troy, in the swimming pool. As they try to escape or signal for help, others arrive, including the two men from the plane, who got a call beforehand telling them to come over and party with them in so many words. So they appear during the chaos. It's a cat and mouse game, as the pool being the sanctuary. Our characters that are trapped there are trying to find a way to either alert somebody or to get away. I think this successfully establishes high stakes, making it clear that no one is safe. I want to explore the chimp, though. Ben. There is heart here that he's part of the family. I love that Lucy gives him a gift, which is a little teddy bear. I personally probably would have lived in constant fear if he might go crazy, but I've also living here in Ohio. There was somebody who had a chimpanzee, or not a chimpanzee, had some sort of ape in, I believe it was Zanesville, and it went crazy and actually attacked her. This also echoes Congo with the tablet giving Ben a voice that pushes buttons. This actually provides some dark comedy, and I thought that was excellent. A minor issue is that Troy mentions that Hawaii is rabies-free, which appears to actually be true. This remains unexplained then as to how everything kind of goes down here, how Ben ends up contracting this, but it doesn't necessarily need to be required. It's just, for me, it feels like a slight plot hole. Let's then shift over to discussing actor performances. I've already said that I didn't necessarily love the character interactions of our main group, so I'm also older, so it could be part of it. What I will say is that this does feel like a group of friends, to a lesser degree with some of the people, but it still kind of works in that vein. Sequoia is attractive and resourceful. I'm not sure if we truly get a character arc for her, but she's still good for what we needed here, showing like fear and trying to survive. I do like her rivalry with Alexander. Wyatt, Hunter, and Chang, they round out the rest of that group. Man works as his vet. Credit to Umba, who was in the suit to capture the motion to bring Ben to life. And then the acting here works for what was needed as well. All that's left then would be the filmmaking aspects. Overall, this was well made and quite efficient. The cinematography and framing effectively capture the setting and attack sequences. Doesn't take long to get into everything there. I think that how they frame things also masks the seams. The CGI for Ben was decent, considering the limitations of not being able to use a real animal. I particularly love the brutal practical effects, while the soundtrack borrows heavily from things like Halloween, maybe even a little bit of Phantasm. I do think that it suits what the film needed as well. So, I'm going to go ahead and just kind of still give credit for that. So let's do some trivia then before I break away from this. And Hawaii is the only state in the U.S. with no cases of rabies. It is actually illegal to own a pet chimp in Hawaii. Koster confirmed that he asked Johannes to conceal the prop of a character's mutilated corpse while shooting to get his reaction being genuine. Now, the chimp effects in this movie are mostly practical. Ben is played by an actor. The filmmaking team used prosthetics and puppetry to make him a convincing, frightening animal. So, okay, I will stand corrected then, so nobody crucify me there. We did build all the animatronic sculpts and stuff. That was a million different things that we used here. If any of it had seen behind the scenes of like Cujo, have the different variations of things that had happened, that kind of thing. I could go on for ages about how crazy they were kind of brought to me, but he wanted to make sure that this was some personality, and in a sense, almost like a Freddy Krueger. I don't necessarily know why Krueger, but I digress. And it sounds like this was like 15 years in the making. Kotzer, who plays Lucy's deaf father, Adam, is himself actually deaf. They wanted to do a lot of blood on this one. I think they kind of do that to an extent, which actually works. This is clearly influenced by Cujo, as the director had referenced that. One of the things that was a misconception in this, like I was saying, apes can swim. And then there's actually some stuff here with Kotzer, the deaf actor who spoke through a translator, talked about how he approached horror differently from his dramatic roles. When you're in drama, you really have to prepare and have that feeling of what's going on. With horror, it's almost better to not know what's going on so you can get an authentic reaction, which definitely makes a whole lot of sense there. So in conclusion, I was pleasantly surprised by this. It takes a simple claustrophobic premise and an animal attack film set around a swimming pool and executes it with style and efficiency. The film successfully balances genuine scares with surprisingly emotional core thanks to Ben's integration into the family dynamic. While the character interactions among the younger cast weren't perfect, the strong visual execution, brutal practical effects, and effective suspense makes this a standout entry in the animal attack subgenre. For fans of something like Cujo, this offers a fresh, tropical, and highly tense take on being trapped by a killer creature. I highly recommend checking this one out. So my rating here for Primate, I give this one an 8 out of 10. So I'm not going to do a spoiler section. There's not anything necessarily to do there. So let me go ahead then and get you over to the trailer of my second featured review.
Christian.
Aileen, Paul, Brigitte.
Christian, sei tu. È la tua voce.
Sì, sono io, Christian Corot.
Scusi, signor Corot. Abbiamo disturbato per sapere...
Se sei lo spirito di Christian, di cosa è successo quella notte. Eravamo in questa casa, soli con te, io, Aileen e Brigitte. Fummo tutti aggrediti, e anche tu. Da chi? Christian, da chi?
Quella notte. Quella notte.
And for my second featured review is going to be Screams in the Night. This goes by the original title of Notturno con Grida. This is from 1981. It was written and co-directed by Ernesto Gastaldi, and then it was co-directed with Vittorio Salerno. So this stars Mari Merrill, Gerardo Amato, Luciano Pigozzi, while also here featuring Gioia Scola, Martine Brochard, and Franco Mole. So this is an Italian horror mystery thriller film. I think it's a little bit of a giallo, supernatural mixed in there as well, but this is from Italy, currently sitting on a 4.0 on IMDb and not enough ratings on Letterboxd, but I would say like a 2 to maybe like a 3.5 star movie over there. And the synopsis is, when a member of a group of occultists is violently slain, the rest head to the woods where they're haunted by an apparently supernatural force. So this is a film that went on a list of ones to check out. The randomizer selected this for my segment that I do on my podcast here, and looking into this was the New Year in the Movie stuff. I found this to be a spiritual sequel to Libido, so that's why that's on the mini reviews. I made sure to watch this ahead of seeing it, and I also had some trouble finding a good copy, so I'll go into this right here in just a second, but the first one I had, it cut out about 35 minutes into it, and so what I ended up doing is buying from the DVD lady a copy of this one that had subtitles and everything like that, so I was able to finally finish it. So it's double as an Odyssey Through the Ones film as well. So I'm going to go ahead and do some featured notes then. I'll start with the director here of Salerno, who has 4 films, and I've seen 2 of them now. These are the only 2 he ever did in horror, which is Libido and now this. And then Gastaldi, he directed 4 movies. These are the only 2 he did in genre as well, and they're the same 2 as his co-director, of course. Then him as a writer, he was prolific. He wrote 84 features. I've seen 13 for 15%. 23 of what he's done is in horror, and everything that I have seen is also in it. So I'm at 56% of his horror output. The top 3 that I've seen of his, or in the genre, is going to be All the Colors of the Dark, Torso, and Your Vice is a Locked Room and Only I Have the Key, which I believe I've covered at least a couple of those on this show as like featured reviews. So top ones that I'm missing here is going to be The Case of the Bloody Iris, Death Walks at Midnight, and The Forbidden Photos of a Lady Above Suspicion. So then to the cast, Mariel, she has been, as an actor, has 7 motion pictures. I've seen 2. They are this and its predecessor. Then our co-star of Amato, who has been in 27. First of his that I've seen has 4 total in genre. I have not seen Sweets from a Stranger, The Red Monks, or A Prisoners of a Nightmare. Then last is going to be Pigozza. He has been in, I've seen 9 of his 97 works. In horror, he has 24, and everything that I've seen also falls into genre. Top 3 that I've seen from him are Blood and Black Lace, All the Colors of the Dark, and The Whip in the Body. The top ones that I'm missing for him, though, are going to be And God Said to Cain, 7 Deaths in a Cat's Eye, and Castle of the Living Dead. Almost watched it a couple years ago for, actually might have been just his last Italian horror month. But then to jump into this movie here, we start by seeing some woods in the dark. There's some heavy breathing. It turns out to be a seance that is being led by Brigitte, who is portrayed by Mariel. And what I'm saying there is that we are seeing this stuff, but this is what she's seeing while she is being like possessed by whatever she's trying to communicate with. So then with her doing this seance are going to be Gerard, portrayed by Amato, Paul, portrayed by Pigozza, Sheena, portrayed by Scola, and then Eileen, portrayed by Brochard. So what they're doing is trying to find out who killed Christian, who's portrayed by Mole. Now we cut to seeing what she's experiencing, where somebody stabs him, but they're off screen, so we just see their hand appear with a knife. Now Brigitte's voice changes just as she's going to reveal the killer, and then she snaps out of her trance. She doesn't remember what happened. This group then leaves the manor that they conducted this in. They head out to the woods where it sounds like Christian's death being officially recognized, that the land is going to be sold. I believe that Eileen, who I believe her name, I think she was actually supposed to be Helena in Libido, is trying to declare him legally dead. I'm gathering that much like Christian's father, what happened to him seems to be unknown. She is now seeing Gerard, and then Sheena and him are having an affair. Now, Paul also seems to be a former priest now. They're out here surveying the land, and they've come to a large rock that seems to have some supernatural past, according to the locals. There's this little plaque that is on it as well. So things get complicated when their card disappears and then reappears in a different spot. Paul takes items out of it, then it vanishes again. Isolating our group in the woods. We then see the specter from the opening as it stalks our group. They are isolated and attacked. Brigitte sees the ghost of Christian. It also doesn't help that there are different kind of plots and everything like that as people are trying to figure out ways that they can try to see if they can get his inheritance for themselves. So that's something I'm going to recap actually the character. I want to start is that this isn't truly a sequel to Libido, but a sequel that takes kind of elements while also retconning a lot of those events as well. It is weird that we see some of the stuff from the original film. There's a filter to show that's a flashback. The problem is that they are taking what elements they want to while also changing what they need to for this story to function. It doesn't do all that well though either, unfortunately, at least for me. So I do appreciate that, between the two films, there's this 15 plus year age gap, and then the characters that are suffering are, by using this film actually suffers, is what I'm trying to say here, from using the same characters, ignoring the need for a new cast. It feels like the filmmakers either forgot or just didn't care what the original continuity was. They might have relied on the fact that the earlier film was hard to find, as the home video market was underdeveloped at that time. Crucially, there's little indication that this is actually a sequel, an issue compounded by modern accessibility to the original. So it's more of like that, I literally just watched Libido and then watched this one almost immediately after, and yeah, things don't necessarily line up. So then, exploring the story, Brigitte leading a seance fits her character logic progression. Her last appearance, while implausible, is forgivable, so Paul's presence is a bigger issue, though his fate was unseen in Libido. Now, changing Eileen's name is acceptable, as that's probably just like a translation thing there, but her presence is more problematic. Given what we know about her and Brigitte, Christian's missing fate is illogical. I did appreciate the parallel between him and his father's fate. The narrative might be taking a remake route there. What I do like is going from the original, where these characters all have motives. Being isolated in the woods gives everybody a chance to kill each other to claim the inheritance. Eileen seems to know what happened to Christian, making the logic one where that she would be the one who killed him. She's now trying to prove it without admitting it. Sheena and Gerard are having an affair, so eliminating Eileen makes sense. I don't know if he's married to her or if they're just lovers, but regardless, greed is here, and that's definitely a hallmark of Gialli. So then there's a supernatural angle. We have this ghost of Christian. He's haunting them. This element is a little bit underdeveloped. My stance is that we see him and how things play at the climax. We know that there's a cult doing rituals, so it seems like it's causing him to show up like he does. And then it's also something I'll get into here, but this rock they also find out here might also be playing a factor. So other themes would be, according to what we're looking into, is it's this trembling. So like I was saying, is a psychic amplifier that would explain why Christian spirit shows up like he does. This is technically a precursor to something like the Blair Witch Project, where we have a group being able to escape the woods, and the road isn't where it was supposed to be, much like the car disappearing and then coming back by this large rock. The shifting reality that entraps him is a concept. There's some borrowed elements of betrayal and cycles of trauma. Also, the occult and supernatural blended in here. So I'm going to go over discussing the acting. I'd say the performances are fine. The biggest issue comes from the writing. Mariel is probably the best here. She's quirky, leading the seance is added, plus her obsession with mushrooms. That does make it seem where Christian might not be real, to be honest, because they might have ate something hallucinogenic. But I don't know if everybody eats it, so that's where it kind of gets a little bit problem there. But yeah, but Amato was fine with Scola. They try to develop a subplot, but doesn't truly seem to matter to me. Pigoza is a veteran who isn't given a whole lot to work with. Brochard was also fine. Mole is brooding, being this haunting figure. All that's left then to be filmmaking. I do think the cinematography and framing are fine. There's it feels almost like shot on video or for television feel, even though I do think this was done more theatrically. They do solid things with capturing the isolated woods. We are limited on the effects that we get. It avoids showing stuff, cutting to the after effects. I did like that we saw at the climax. That was probably the hallmark for the effects there, but the music feels borrowed. I still enjoyed it. They do some solid things though with changing of voices to make things just a little bit more creepy. So I didn't find any trivia on the IMDb page, but I will say is that in conclusion, this is frustratingly inconsistent spiritual sequel to Libido. The film attempts to blend a Giallo-style inheritance plot driven by greed with an underdeveloped supernatural element, Christian's ghost and a psychic amplifier, and some weak writing that contradicts the original's continuity. Though the core concept of shifting reality and isolation is conceptually strong, even potentially inspiring films like the Blair Witch Project, this is hampered by weak writing. Performances are adequate, with Mariel a standout, and the isolation is well captured despite the television aesthetic. Ultimately, its ambitious combination of occult mystery and psychological thriller fails, while it's resulting in a watchable but structurally flawed and unjustified continuation. My problem is just that there's things that are happening that I don't necessarily know how they're supposed to connect to other things. But for me, Screams of the Night, I still think this one's fine. I gave it a 5 out of 10, and I'm also not going to do a spoiler section. I don't necessarily know if there's anything deeper that I could go into that would, kind of fall into that. So I'm going to go ahead and do those, get you over to one last break before I close out the show.
Pod Nation TV has you beamed up with Out of This World award-winning podcast, found exclusively on Pod Nation TV. Download Pod Nation TV for Roku and Fire TV. Pod Nation TV, Out of This World.
Are you tired of the coffee crash? Still jitter an hour after your morning cup of coffee? Listen, I used to drink 5, 6, 7 cups a day to just keep going. The anxiety, the stomach pains, the afternoon crash, it was brutal. Then I discovered Rise Coffee, and everything changed. Rise has less than half the caffeine as regular coffee, but here's the magic. It contains 6 organic mushrooms, including cordyceps, lion's mane, and others that naturally sustain your energy without the jitters or crash. We're talking sharper focus, immune support, better gut health, and calm, sustained energy that lasts all day. Plus, it's organic, vegan, and has 0 added sugars. Unlike other mushroom coffees, Rise is USA grown in California. A full spectrum of mushrooms per serving that actually works. Here at Pod Nation, we only partner with brands we actually believe in. And Rise Coffee is the real deal. Head to risesuperfoods.com and use promo code PODNA15 for 15% off your order. That's PODNA 15 for 15% off. Ditch the crash. Fuel your day the right way with Rise Coffee.
And welcome back. So if you'd like to send me any sort of feedback, anything you want read on the show, or any screener requests, anything like that, you can send those to journeywithacinephile@gmail.com. If you'd like to read any of my written reviews or see any of the old past podcast episodes, all of that is being stored over at Journey with a Cinephile. That is my blog, and that's going to be horrorreview.webnode.com. If you'd like to follow me and become friends on Facebook, it's going to be David Garrett Jr. is my name over on there. There's going to be a link in the show notes. And then if you'd like to follow me on Twitter, it's going to be Buckeye from Mish. And then if you'd like to follow my Letterboxd page where I have all of my reviews, whether that's going to be horror or non-horror, that's going to be David OSU is my name on that. Instagram and Threads, I'm David OSU87. Over on my personal Instagram page, you might see some of my family stuff every now and then whenever I remember to post something. My wife is much better at it than I am. But then if you'd like to follow the Journey with a Cinephile Instagram, that's going to be Journey with a Cinephile, all one word. And then also direct you, if you'd like, to the Discord channel. That's going to be the Nightclub Discord, but I have a page over there. And there's also some other great pages of other shows and them kind of messing around and everything like that. Do highly recommend if you want to go ahead and check that out. And then the last thing I'll actually say here, if you would like to listen to the show a day early, this is always going to be streaming over there on the Pod Nation TV app. So I will have, once again, a link in the show notes for that if that is something that you're interested in. So yeah, there's some great stuff here. There's some great shows on some of these other networks and stuff. I highly recommend checking them out. And for my next episode is going to be another of my New Year, New Movie. And so this is going to be 325. And the randomizer selected The Profane Exhibit, which kind of looks like it might be an anthology film. I haven't looked all that much into it, but I am intrigued. And I'm going to be pairing this up with 28 Years Later, The Bone Temple. So I'm going to go to the Gateway Film Center to check that out this weekend. And then I'm also going to have my Scouring Through the Sixes rewatch is going to be Rodan. And then I have a couple of screeners here of Grizzly Night and The House on Hill Street, I think that might be the name of it, and I'll have more mini reviews mixed in for you there as well. So I don't think there's anything else I had to say here for this outro, except that wraps up this episode of Journey with a Cinephile, a horror movie podcast. Thank you for joining me on this exploration of horror cinema. If you enjoyed the show, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and follow along for more deep dives into the macabre. Until next time, keep watching horror, and remember, fear is just a frame away.
It had been a wonderful evening, and what I needed now to give it the perfect ending